Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing very well. I'm here to give my Premier League predictions for the up and coming season. So if you enjoy, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. And let me know in the comments below your predictions for the up and coming Premier League season. So let's kick off by putting Bournemouth in 20th spot. Scott Parker has come out in the press for the up and coming season and has said, we need to work out whether we want to give ourselves a chance of being competitive this year. At the moment, that is not the case. That is extremely concerning. And I do think Scott Parker is a genuinely really good young up-and-coming English manager. So from an England fan's perspective, that's quite exciting. But you look at the signings they've made, Joe Rothwell, Marcus Tavernier and Ryan Fredericks. I actually think they're all genuinely good signings, especially Tavernier. It's just nowhere near enough for an up-and-coming Premier League campaign, especially when they've lost the likes of Phillips, who's gone back to Liverpool, and Gary Cahill, who's been released. Bournemouth needs so many more additions, especially in defence. I think they're going to massively struggle this season to even get out of the relegation zone, and they'll probably finish 20th. But I am recording this video the day before the Premier League starts, so who knows, they might make loads of signings in the summer or even January. I do hope they keep Scott Parker for the whole season, but I think they'll struggle massively this up-and-coming season. I have another newly promoted club in the relegation zone in the form of Fulham. Now, last season in the Championship, they broke loads of goal-scoring records. Mitrovic was on fire, and I actually genuinely think he's going to have a really good campaign. And I actually think Solanke's going to have a really good campaign for Bournemouth. I think both those strikers will consistently play for their teams and both get at least over 10 goals. But I do think Fulham needs so many more reinforcements, especially defensively. What I will say though is they've made more signings than Bournemouth, and I do like some of their signings, particularly Mbabu and Leno, the right back from Wolfsburg and the Arsenal goalkeeper. But for me, they still need to improve defensively, particularly at centre backs. I don't think Tim Ream and Tosin Adarabioyo are good enough at Premier League level. And like I said, I think Fulham need to make one or two more additions to even give themselves a chance of getting out of the relegation zone. I think Harry Wilson going forward and Mitrovic are good options, and Solomon looks like a good signing. But like I said, I think Fulham will be just too weak defensively and they'll probably go down. Although I don't think they'll be horrific. I think it'll be relatively competitive, but I do think they'll get relegated. And then the final team I think that will be relegated are Southampton. Now, in their last 12 games in the Premier League, they won 9 and won once, and that was a very lucky home win against Arsenal. And I think that form will continue to the beginning of this season. Now, in terms of signings they've signed Bazunu, Aribo and Mara. I think they're all very good signings, and they've made other additions as well, but I think they're the three standout signings for Southampton. But for me, they need to improve defensively, particularly at centre-back. I don't think the likes of Bednarek, Lincao and Jack Stevens are good enough at Premier League level. But you'd also argue that actually the best business they've done is actually keeping James Ward-Prowse. If they can keep him, they've got a chance. If he goes either in the summer or January, they're completely gone. But I do think Southampton will struggle massively this season, and I can see them just getting relegated. And it also wouldn't surprise me if Ralph was sacked during the season. Just surviving, I have Everton. Now, they were so horrific defensively last season, and the only defensive additions they've made are James Tarkowski and Vinage from Sporting Lisbon on loan. And they are decent signings defensively, but they were so bad defensively that I think they need to make even more signings. And given that they're in so much debt and they need money to build a new stadium, I just don't see them making loads more signings from now until the end of the window. And then going forward, of course, they've lost Richarlison. And yes, Dwight McNeil is a good signing in my opinion, but of course, he's not enough to replace Richarlison. They need at least one or two more additions. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin is out injured for the beginning of the season. So if Everton start badly, the crowd could really turn potentially against Frank Lampard and, more importantly, the Everton players. So I am concerned for them. Although they are linked with Idrissa Gana Gueye, which would be a really good signing coming back to Everton, but I definitely think they'll struggle. They might just stay up, but I do think they'll be in a relegation battle this season. I just think losing Richarlison on and off the pitch is such a massive blow for Everton, and I struggle to see how they're going to replace him. I have Forest 16th and surviving, and here's why. And yes, they've lost a lot of players from the playoff final, but actually they've still got a core group of players from the Championship that I think are Premier League quality, the likes of McKenna, Steve Cook, Worrell, Yates and Brennan Johnson. But the signings they've made have been really decent. I mean, Dean Henderson, I think, is an upgrade in Samba. Losing Jed Spence was a massive blow, but I think secretly Forest always knew they were going to lose him. And Nico Williams seems to be a really exciting young replacement. Actually, online, some Forest fans reckon that he's an upgrade to Jed Spence, so that's a positive for them. They haven't quite managed to replace Garner, who's gone back to Man United. But Lewis O'Brien, I think, is a decent signing from Huddersfield, and Toffolo, who's a good option at left back. So Forest made loads of really good signings. It's just about whether they can gel together as a team. But I think Steve Cooper can get the best out of them. And Steve Cooper was so good setting up Forest defensively last season. And then, of course, with the signings I've mentioned, I haven't even mentioned Jesse Lingard, who I think will do a decent job for Forest. So I actually think Forest will stay up. And it's also worth noting that Forest, of course, haven't been in the Premier League for so many years. Their fans will be right behind the team the whole season, and the atmosphere at the City Ground will be electric. So I think Forest will get over the line and stay up, but the home support is going to be crucial for Forest. Now, the next two teams that I mentioned, some people actually might think they'll both be relegated, but I don't think either of these teams will, and I'll explain why. So I have Leeds United in 15th. Now, the biggest problem for Leeds United last season was twofold. First of all, they had so many injuries. I mean, for example, Patrick Bamford only played four full games last season. So injuries were a massive issue for Leeds, but the majority of those injury players are back, ready for the start of the season, apart from Stuart Dallas. And then the obvious second biggest problem for Leeds was the fact that Marcelo Bielsa left halfway through the season, or not left, sacked. Jesse Marsch came in as a replacement, and I think, actually, out of all the managers that were available, he was probably the best option because he understands the pressing game, and it's relatively similar style to Marcelo Bielsa. So Leeds United, they managed to just stay up, but like I said, all the players that were injured, apart from Dallas, are now back, and I really like the signings they've made. They've signed the likes of Arison and Christensen from RB Salzburg, players that Jesse Marsch knows. Tyler Adams from Red Bull Leipzig, who's a really good addition, and Roca from Bayern Munich, and others as well. And I do think Leeds will add to their squad. And yes, Rafinha and Phillips are a big blow, but Phillips actually didn't quite suit the system of Jesse Marsch as he did to Marcelo Bielsa. And yes, Rafinha is a big loss, but I think Leeds have replaced him relatively well. And you've got to remember that Patrick Bamford coming back now ready for the new season will almost feel like a new signing because he only played 4 full 90-minute matches last season. So I actually think Leeds United will be relatively comfortable. Then in 14th, I have Brentford. Yes, I think Brentford are going to stay up. And yes, they were on a poor run of form towards the second half of last season, and Ericsson was so crucial for them. But having said that, I just trust Brentford's recruitment. Since Matthew Bennon's come in as the owner, Brentford have continuously improved their recruitment and have managed to sell big players for big fees and then replace them adequately and almost upgraded their players. And they've still got the likes of Ivan Toney and Mbeumo, and I think both those players are going to have really great seasons, especially Ivan Toney. I envision that Toney's going to improve on his 17-goal contribution from last season and then get a big money move at the end of this up-and-coming season. And then I really like the signing of Keane Lewis-Potter. Ben Mee is a really smart signing. And then Hickney from Bologna is a really exciting prospect. So I just trust Brentford's recruitment. I think their team will improve. And I think they'll be relatively comfortable and stay up in the Premier League. I think the next group of teams are the cluster that I think are going to finish either the lower mid-table or upper mid-table. And the first of those is Wolves in 13th. Now, they only conceded 43 goals last season, which is really impressive. But they only scored 33 goals, which is really bad. And Jimenez is out injured for the beginning of this season. And look, for him to even come back from his injury and not retire and play at the level of Wolves and even contribute to the team, like for example his stunning solo goal away at Southampton was brilliant. So Jimenez has done so well to come back from his injury, but he's out injured again for the beginning of the season, and I think Wolves need at least one other option up front. They've loaned out Fabio Silva, and yes, Neto will feel like a new signing because he's come back from injury, as will Morgan Gibbs-White because he had such a phenomenal loan spell at Sheffield United. But I still think Wolves need a lot more going up front. I will say though that yes, Roman Saiz has left, but Nathan Collins is a fantastic replacement. Yes, £20 million is a lot for him, but he's still very, very young and performed really well for Burnley. I just think Wolves need more reinforcements, especially going forward. So I think they'll struggle to score goals. Then we have Leicester City in 12th, and they were so bad defensively last season, especially at defending set pieces. And it's so hard to see Leicester improving on their finish from last season, given that they haven't signed anyone and they've lost Kasper Schmeichel, who's gone back to Nice. Well, not gone back, but he's gone to Nice. I think Brendan Rodgers is a really good coach, but like I said, at this moment in time, they haven't signed anyone. They've lost Schmeichel, so it's hard to see how they're going to dramatically improve defensively and dramatically improve going forward. So I think they'll slightly regress next season and finish 12th. Then we have Aston Villa in 11th. Now, they did a lot of early business in the early transfer window, signing Camara from Marseille, Carlos from Sevilla, and then also Olsen, the goalkeeper. But then apart from that, they haven't added anyone. They've lost Carney Chukwuemeka, who's gone to Chelsea after he refused to sign a new contract. And I'm just not sure about Steven Gerrard as a manager. He came in, great start as an Aston Villa manager, kind of slightly regressed as the season went on. So I'm kind of on the fence a bit with Steven Gerrard. Also, losing Mick Beale to QPR I think is a really big blow. What I will say about Aston Villa, though, is that they've got so many exciting young players in their team. Of course, Jacob Ramsey having his breakout season last season, but also Cameron Archer, they've decided to keep him after his impressive loan spell at Preston. I think he'll contribute to Villa. And like I said, they've got a lot of other young players that are coming through the Villa Academy. So the future is bright for Villa. I just don't think they'll excel. Patrick Vieira did such a brilliant job last season as Crystal Palace manager. I think it was always going to be hard for Palace to transition from Roy Hodgson, who was there for a number of seasons, to Vieira, a completely different style of football. And a lot of people thought that Vieira would be the first manager sacked. But here he is at the start of next season. And Palace, yes, they haven't made tons of new signings, but they've got so many really talented young players. I think the likes of Eberechi Eze and Michael Olise are going to really shine this season. Wilfred Zaha, of course, is still at the club. And I think Palace are going to just build on from last season and finish comfortably in 10th spot. Graham Potter is one of the outstanding managers in the Premier League. And I just trust Brighton's recruitment to deal with the loss of Cucurella and Basuma. So I think Brighton will deal with that well. And they've also got Undav, who had a phenomenal goal-scoring record in the Pro League in Belgium. So I think Graham Potter will get the most out of their players and they'll continue to play fantastic football and finish comfortably high up in the Premier League in 9th. It was anticipated that Newcastle were going to spend so much money this summer, but they haven't. That's not been the case. They signed Nick Pope, which I think is an excellent signing, a proper proven Premier League goalkeeper, arguably one of the best shot stoppers in the Premier League. And they've also signed Botman from Lille. They tried to sign him in January, but this time they've secured their main signing, an excellent defender from the French league. I think that will just only boost Newcastle. And then they've got Kieran Trippier and Callum Wilson, who are both back, fresh, ready to go for the up-and-coming season because they both got injured towards the second half of last season. And I think Eddie Howe actually is really underestimated as a coach. And yes, Newcastle made loads of new signings in January, but it was still a relatively underperforming top-end championship squad that Eddie Howe managed to get the best out of. So I think Eddie Howe deserves a lot of credit, and I think Newcastle will continue to progress. I can see Bruno Guimaraes continuing to play really well in midfield, and Newcastle competing for those European places, but maybe just missing out on a Europa League place or Europa Conference League place. So I think they'll finish in 8th. What a phenomenal job David Moyes has done at West Ham in his second spell. They almost won the Europa League. They just missed out. And for so long last season, they were competing in the top 4. I do think they're not maybe going to be as competitive in the league, but I still think they're going to be really, really strong. I can't really comment on the signings of Augerd, I've probably pronounced that wrong, the defender from France, and then Sakamanka, who's coming from Sassuolo. I've never really seen them play, so I can't comment on them. But I think the best business they've done is keeping Declan Rice and Jarrod Bowen. I think that's massive for West Ham. So with David Moyes at the wheel, keeping the likes of Bowen and Rice, I think they're going to have a really strong season, but it might not be just as good as last season, although last season was a phenomenal season for West Ham. I'm still not sure about Erik ten Hag as Man United manager. For me, the jury's still out on him. And yes, they signed Martinez, who obviously knows Erik ten Hag, and Erik ten Hag knows him. But I think the kind of transfer saga of Frankie de Jong is not going to help Erik or the team. So I'm just not really sure about Man United. I think they need to make way more signings as well, especially going forward. Although I think Ericsson is a smart signing, I do like that, and I think he will improve the team. I just don't see them really competing. Arsenal have made really exciting signings in the transfer window, signing Gabriel Jesus from Man City and Zinchenko from Man City. I think they're both excellent signings, and Saliba coming back to the team from his loan spell in Nice will feel like a new signing, and I certainly think they will be competitive in the top four. And you know, for a lot of last season, they were competing in the top four, and they almost finished in the top four spot. They just lost out to Spurs towards the end of the season. I just think it's a really young team, and they're going to need more time to mature. And Mikel Arteta, I think, is going to need more time to mature as a manager. But I do hope he stays as Arsenal manager, because I think so long as he is the Arsenal manager, the future's bright for Arsenal. And I can definitely see them in a few seasons' time competing and comfortably finishing in the top four spot. I just think with the experience of Tottenham and Chelsea, that will just be too much for Arsenal to compete. So I think Arsenal will, again, just miss out on the top four spot. I think Sterling and Koulibaly are some of the most underrated signings in the transfer window, especially Sterling. That's a fantastic signing. But Rudiger is a massive loss for Chelsea. And I think Chelsea will be really competitive when they spend more and more money. Just right now, I don't think they've done enough to really compete with Spurs and Liverpool and Man City just yet. So I think they'll finish fourth, but they won't be anywhere near Liverpool and Man City. For Spurs to finish fourth last season was a really big boost for them, getting that Champions League money and, of course, Champions League football. And I think it is a cliche around the online football community, but I do think Spurs have had the best window. Signing Perisic was really smart. Basuma from Brighton is an excellent smart signing at a relatively cheap price. Spence is an exciting up-and-coming young fullback. Longley is a solid addition in defence. And then Richarlison is a fantastic option going forward for them when the likes of Heung-min Son and Kuvalevski aren't quite firing for Tottenham. And then even with the likes of Perisic, he can start a left wing back, and then if Spurs need a goal, they can just chuck him up front. So I think Spurs have made some really good signings, and I do think they'll comfortably finish in the top four. It's just that Liverpool and Man City are on a different planet compared to the likes of Spurs and Chelsea. So I don't think Spurs will be anywhere near Liverpool or Man City. But they might go far in a competition like the FA Cup or the League Cup. And then, who do I think will win the Premier League? I think it will be Man City, and here's why. Haaland is a fantastic signing from the Bundesliga, and actually, generally speaking, players that have come from the Bundesliga to the Premier League have struggled. You look at the likes of Jadon Sancho, Leon Bailey and Weghorst have all come to the Premier League and have struggled, but Haaland's goal-scoring record just cannot be ignored, and he's going to have so many chances put on a plate for him that he will score tons of goals for Man City. Alvarez will feel like a new signing now that he's going to be actually within the squad for Man City. And then Calvin Phillips is an excellent, smart signing, a really good backup for Rodri if Rodri gets injured or maybe someone else from Man City gets injured. Their defence is still very strong. Kyle Walker's still doing a great job for them, and Cancelo is one of the best defenders in the league. So I think Man City will do more than enough to win the league. With Liverpool, don't get me wrong, I think Núñez is a fantastic signing. Carvalho was fantastic, brilliant for Fulham last season, and that's a really smart signing. And then Ramsey's just a good backup for Nico Williams. I just think with Liverpool, if they get one injury in midfield, they're going to really struggle. And they are the sort of team, and Jurgen Klopp is the sort of manager that isn't just going to buy a player just for the sake of it. They're going to wait until they can find and get the right player that will really fit this team. And I just have a feeling that Bellingham will sign for them next season, which will be an incredible signing, not just for Liverpool, but for the Premier League. So I think Liverpool are just short in midfield. And also, Mane was such an influential player for so many years at Liverpool. I think he will be somewhat of a miss for Liverpool. But look, Liverpool are a phenomenal team, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won the league. I just think Man City have that little bit more squad depth, especially with the likes of them signing Phillips, who's a backup to Rodri, and Liverpool, for me, not really having that backup in midfield. But hey, they're my Premier League predictions. I'm sure I'll have so many of them wrong. Let me know what your Premier League predictions are in the comments below, and please like, comment and subscribe. I would really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video.